Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the quiet village of Elmswood, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. The cobblestone streets were lined with quaint cottages, their thatched roofs covered in moss that had gathered over the centuries. Children played in the fields during the day, and at night, the villagers gathered around the old fire pit in the center of the square, sharing stories passed down through generations. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where nothing ever changed, except for the slow, relentless ticking of the ancient clock tower that loomed over the village. The clock tower was Elmswood's most iconic structure, a monolith of stone and wood that had stood the test of time for as long as anyone could remember. Its face was adorned with intricate carvings, and its hands, made of dark iron, moved with a precision that was almost supernatural. The tower had a presence, a weight that was felt by everyone in the village. They revered it, respected it, but they did not understand it. The clock tower was more than just a timepiece, it was the heartbeat of the village, the silent guardian of their way of life. Leon was not like the other villagers. He was young, just 19, with a restless spirit and an insatiable curiosity. Where others saw the clock tower as a symbol of stability, Leon saw a mystery waiting to be unraveled. He had grown up listening to the stories about the tower, how it was enchanted, how it was watched over by the timekeeper, a mythical figure who could control the flow of time itself. The stories had fueled his imagination, and as he grew older, his curiosity about the tower only intensified. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, Leon was rummaging through the attic of his family's cottage. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten relics, filled with old books, broken tools, and dusty heirlooms. As he sifted through the clutter, something caught his eye, an old, weathered journal bound in cracked leather. It was tucked away in a corner, almost as if it had been hidden on purpose. Leon picked up the journal, brushing off the dust, and opened it carefully. The pages were yellowed with age, but the handwriting was still legible. The first page was inscribed with a name that sent a shiver down his spine: Thomas Grayson, his grandfather. Thomas had been the village clockmaker, a man known for his skill with intricate mechanisms and his deep knowledge of timepieces. Leon had never known him. Thomas had died before he was born, but he had always heard stories about the old clockmaker. The journal was filled with notes, sketches, and diagrams, an archive of his grandfather's work and thoughts. But as Leon flipped through the pages, he realized that this was no ordinary journal. The entries became more erratic, more fragmented, as if Thomas had been on the verge of some great discovery, something that had consumed him entirely. There were references to the clock tower, to the timekeeper, and to something called the chronodial, a term that Leon had never heard before. One entry in particular stood out, written in a hurried scrawl: "The chronodial is the key. It is the heart of the clock tower, the source of its power. But it is dangerous, too dangerous. If anyone were to tamper with it." The entry ended abruptly, the final words trailing off into a jagged line. Leon's heart raced as he read the words. The chronodial, was it real? Was it hidden somewhere within the clock tower? His mind was made up. He had to find the chronodial, to understand what his grandfather had discovered. But more than that, he had to see the clock tower for himself, to explore its secrets. It was a decision born out of a mixture of curiosity and recklessness, the kind that often led to trouble. But Leon didn't care. He felt a pull, a compulsion that he couldn't explain. He knew that this was something he had to do. The next day, Leon set out for the clock tower. The villagers watched him with a mix of concern and disapproval. The tower was off limits, a place that was respected but not disturbed. But Leon was undeterred. He approached the tower, its massive doors looming before him. They were made of heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands, and they creaked ominously as he pushed them open. Inside, the tower was dark and musty, the air thick with the scent of aged wood and dust. The only light came from the narrow windows high above, casting thin beams that illuminated motes of dust dancing in the air. The walls were lined with gears, cogs, and other mechanical parts, all interconnected in a complex web that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The floor was covered in a thick layer of grime, and as Leon stepped inside, the sound of his footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space that he made his way deeper into the tower, climbing a spiral staircase that wound around the inner walls. The higher he climbed, the more intricate the machinery became. Massive gears turned slowly, their teeth interlocking with a precision that was almost hypnotic. Pipes and cables snaked along the walls, carrying who knows what to different parts of the tower. It was a mechanical marvel, a feat of engineering that defied explanation. Finally, Leon reached a landing near the top of the tower. There, in the center of the room, stood a pedestal. On it rested an object that took Leon's breath away, a dial, about the size of a dinner plate, made of some kind of gleaming metal. It was intricately carved with symbols and numbers that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. This had to be the chrono dial, the object his grandfather had written about. Without thinking, Leon reached out and touched the dial. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, a jolt of energy shot through him, and the entire tower seemed to shudder. The gears and cogs ground to a halt, the pipes hissed, and the lights dimmed. For a brief moment, everything was still. Then, with a deafening roar, the tower sprang to life. Leon stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the tower vibrating beneath his feet, as if it were alive, as if it were reacting to his presence. The chrono dial glowed with an otherworldly light, and Leon could sense that something had changed, something fundamental. He turned and ran back down the stairs, his mind racing. What had he done? Had he somehow activated the chrono dial? And if so, what were the consequences? As he burst through the tower's doors and into the village square, the answer became horrifyingly clear. The village was frozen in time. The birds in the sky were suspended in mid-flight, the windmill's blades were stuck in place, and the villagers were motionless, caught in whatever they had been doing at the moment the clock tower had stopped. It was as if the entire village had been trapped in a single, eternal moment. Leon's heart sank. He had done this. He had stopped time itself, freezing his friends, his family, and his entire world in place. Panic set in, and he felt a crushing weight of guilt. How could he have been so foolish? How could he have let his curiosity lead to such a catastrophe? But as the initial shock wore off, a new resolve began to take hold. He couldn't leave things like this. He had to find a way to fix it, to undo what he had done. The answer had to lie within the clock tower, within the depths he had yet to explore. The only way to set things right was to delve deeper into the tower, to find the true secret of the chrono dial and restore the flow of time. Leon returned to the tower, his mind set on the task ahead. This time, he would go deeper, further into the unknown. He would confront whatever dangers lay ahead, whatever trials the tower had in store for him. He had no other choice. The deeper Leon ventured into the clock tower, the more disorienting it became. The walls seemed to shift and change around him, the passages twisting in ways that defied logic. The further he went, the more he felt as if he were walking through a dream where time had no meaning, where past, present, and future were all one. He encountered strange visions along the way, glimpses of the past, fragments of the future, and moments that never were. In one room, he saw his younger self, playing in the fields with his childhood friends. In another, he saw an older version of himself, standing alone in a desolate landscape, his face etched with lines of sorrow. These visions were unsettling, but they also gave him a sense of perspective, a reminder of what was at stake. As Leon pressed on, he began to notice the presence of the timekeeper. It was a feeling at first, a sense of being watched, of someone or something observing his every move. Then, as he descended further into the tower, the presence became more tangible. Shadows flitted at the edges of his vision, whispers echoed through the corridors, and strange symbols appeared on the walls, glowing with an eerie light. Finally, in a dimly lit chamber deep within the tower, Leon came face to face with the timekeeper. The figure was tall and shrouded in a dark cloak, its face hidden in the shadows. It stood at the center of the room, motionless, as if waiting for Leon to approach. "Who are you?" Leon demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "What is this place? What have I done?" The timekeeper did not answer immediately. Instead, it raised a hand and pointed to the chrono dial, which had appeared once again on a pedestal in the center of the room. The symbols on the dial glowed faintly, pulsing in time with Leon's heartbeat. "You have tampered with the flow of time," the timekeeper said, its voice deep and resonant. "You have disrupted the natural order, and now you must face the consequences." Leon felt a chill run down his spine. "I didn't mean to," he said, his voice trembling. "I just wanted to understand. I just wanted to help." "Curiosity is a dangerous thing," the timekeeper replied. "It can lead to knowledge, but it can also lead to destruction. The power to control time is not something to be taken lightly." Leon took a step forward, his determination growing stronger. "Then help me fix it," he pleaded. "Tell me what I need to do to restore time." The timekeeper studied him for a long moment, its gaze inscrutable. "To restore time, you must navigate the depths of the tower and unlock its secrets," it finally said. "But be warned, each step you take will bring you closer to the truth, and the truth is not always what you desire." With that, the timekeeper vanished, leaving Leon alone in the chamber with the chrono dial. He knew what he had to do. He had to continue deeper into the tower, to face whatever trials awaited him. Only then could he hope to undo the damage he had caused. The journey that followed was unlike anything Leon had ever experienced. The tower seemed to have a mind of its own, shifting and changing with every step he took. The walls closed in, the floors tilted, and the air grew colder and thinner. Leon encountered traps and puzzles that tested his wits and his resolve. He had to think quickly, using every bit of knowledge and skill he had gained from his grandfather's journal and his own experiences, but it wasn't just the physical challenges that tested him. As he delved deeper, the tower began to play with his mind, conjuring up memories and fears that he had long buried. He saw his parents, who had died when he was young, their faces twisted in pain. He saw his friends, frozen in time, unable to move or speak. And he saw himself, standing at the edge of a dark abyss, teetering on the brink of despair. But through it all, Leon pressed on. He knew that the only way to save his village was to confront these visions, to face the truth about himself and the choices he had made. He couldn't let fear or doubt stop him. He had to reach the heart of the tower, where the true secret of the chrono dial awaited. Finally, after what felt like days of endless climbing and searching, Leon reached the heart of the tower. It was a massive chamber, larger than any he had encountered before. The walls were lined with gears and cogs of all sizes, their teeth interlocking in a complex, intricate pattern. At the center of the chamber was a massive clock, its face adorned with the same shifting symbols as the chrono dial. The timekeeper was waiting for him, standing beside the clock, its dark cloak billowing as if caught in an unseen wind. The room was filled with a low, humming sound, the sound of time itself, vibrating through the very walls. "This is the final test," the timekeeper said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "To restore time, you must solve the puzzle of the clock. But know this, every choice you make will have consequences. Time is not a straight line, it is a web, and every thread you pull will affect the others." Leon stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the massive clock. He could feel the weight of the task before him, the enormity of what he was about to do. The clock was more than just a timepiece, it was a representation of time itself, the very fabric of reality. To manipulate it was to manipulate the flow of time, to alter the course of history. He studied the clock, trying to make sense of the symbols and patterns. It was a puzzle, a riddle that had to be solved with precision and care. He had to align the gears, adjust the dials, and set the hands in just the right way. But as he worked, he began to realize that this was more than just a mechanical task. It was a test of his understanding of time, of his ability to see the connections between past, present, and future. The clock began to resist his efforts, the gears grinding and the hands refusing to move. The timekeeper watched silently, its presence a constant reminder of the stakes. Leon's frustration grew, but he forced himself to stay calm, to focus on the task at hand. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Leon completed the puzzle. The gears clicked into place, the dials aligned, and the clock's hands began to move. The room was filled with a low, resonant hum, and Leon felt a wave of energy wash over him. The clock tower came to life, the mechanisms turning, the gears grinding, and the pipes hissing. Time itself began to flow once more, but the victory was bittersweet. As the clock tower returned to life, Leon felt a strange sensation, a pull, a tug at the very fabric of his being. The timekeeper stepped forward, its voice solemn. "You have restored time, but at a cost. The power to control time is not without its price." Leon looked down at his hands, which were beginning to fade, to blur at the edges. He realized with a sinking feeling what the timekeeper meant. In restoring time, he had sacrificed his place in it. He was being erased, pulled out of the timeline, his existence unraveling like a thread in a tapestry. "No," Leon whispered, his voice barely audible. "There has to be another way," but the timekeeper shook its head. "There is no other way. You have restored the flow of time, but in doing so, you have become part of the clock tower, part of the machinery that keeps time moving. This is your fate, Leon. This is the price you must pay." Leon felt tears welling up in his eyes, but he knew there was no point in fighting it. He had made his choice, and now he had to live, or rather, not live, with the consequences. He had saved his village, but at the cost of his own existence. As the clock tower's mechanisms whirred and clicked around him, Leon's form continued to fade, until he was nothing more than a shadow, a faint outline of the person he had once been. He felt himself being drawn into the heart of the tower, into the very machinery that he had just repaired. He was becoming part of the clock tower, part of the chrono dial, part of time itself. The last thing he saw before he was fully absorbed was the village of Elmswood, now restored to its normal, peaceful state. The villagers went about their daily lives, unaware of the events that had just transpired. The clock tower stood tall and proud, its hands moving steadily once more, a silent guardian of the village and the flow of time. And then, Leon was gone, years passed, and the village of Elmswood continued on as it always had. The clock tower remained a constant presence, its mechanisms ticking away, marking the passage of time. The villagers told stories about the tower, about the mysterious timekeeper who watched over it, but they never knew the truth about what had happened. Leon's sacrifice was forgotten, his existence erased from the timeline. But the clock tower remembered. Deep within its heart, in the very machinery that kept time moving, there was a trace of him, a faint echo of the young adventurer who had once dared to tamper with the flow of time. One day, a young girl, about the same age as Leon had been when his journey began, found an old, weathered journal in her attic. It was bound in cracked leather, its pages yellowed with age, but the handwriting was still legible. She opened the journal and began to read, her eyes wide with wonder. Unbeknownst to her, from high within the clock tower, a shadowy figure watched over her, a faint smile on its face. The cycle of curiosity and adventure continued, but this time, with the wisdom of the past to guide the future, the clock tower stood as a testament to the passage of time, to the choices that had been made, and to the sacrifices that had been required to keep the world turning. And deep within its heart, the echo of Leon's existence remained, a silent guardian of time, watching over the village of Elmswood for all eternity.